If you clicked on this video, I'm going to assume you know what power scaling already is, but for those that don't know, power scaling is basically categorizing a character based on feats and statements that are given in a piece of media or thing, and then proceed to categorize the character on a level or strength, and then you use the research that you've gathered and all the info that you've used and gathered to essentially ask yourself a what if question of who win in the fight, X character versus X character, like Goku versus Superman, SpongeBob versus Tom and Jerry, or something really stupid like Wonder Woman versus Bugs Bunny. Like the power scaling is, there's no real limits to power scaling, and yeah. And I know what y'all are thinking of. Oh, this sounds like a really fun idea. I bet it's really chill and civilized. And no, not really. Because power scaling has created this weird subsection of the internet of where people only care about power scaling. They don't care about stories or development or character growth or anything. They only care about strength. And this has affected so many pieces of media and has leaked out of the corner of the internet to other things. Like, you can go on the internet and search a video about asking about explaining how like Subaru from ReZero is this really interesting and really complex character, and then you'll get a comment in this comment section, say a random comment in the comment section saying Goku solos, and like, okay, like, why does that matter? That's not this kind of conversation. Why is that relevant to this conversation? And it creates a really interesting subsection of fans of certain media of where they don't really care about the story or the characters or anything that actually happens in the story. They only really care about the characters and how strong they are. So they could just bring them up to the lunch table and say, hey guys, this character is actually this strong now, so he can beat your character. And don't get me wrong, I think it's perfectly fine if you do this. My main issue with this though is that people will treat the strength of a character as a replacement for telling a story or a character development at all. Literally, there is a term for this actually called the Relevancy League, which is a group of characters that are only talked about for this exclusive reason that they're really strong, and they're never talked about for any other reason. Which is so funny to me, that these characters are only relevant because they are strong. Not because of their stories, not because of the media they're in, literally just because they are really strong, and that's it. This is what the Relevancy League is. And is the issue with power scalers is that they only care about power scaling. And they treat it as this beats over story, themes, and character development. Like, look me in the face and say, actually, see, Gojo is nothing compared to Rimuru from that time I got reincarnated as a slime. Because Rimuru is multiversal, controversial, and can fart and destroy the multiverse. And he's so much better than Gojo. And then you just look at them like, what the fudge are you talking about? Why is that relevant? And like, what? That doesn't mean you're a better character than like a character like Gojo. Why are people saying this? And there is another big issue with power scaling in general, is the fact that most people that power scale don't actually read the media they're power scaling. Like, there is such a big case of this. This was recently shown off in the whole TikTok war, information war between Naruto and One Piece, where one guy sold every Naruto fan on the internet and exposed the fact that most Naruto fans haven't actually read their media that they're power scaling, and went as far to defend their media by saying that air is different, which created one of the funniest, most insane claims I have ever seen, that Naruto air is different than One Piece air, which is such a crazy claim to say when there's no evidence to back this up, but whatever. Let me bring up a popular example. There is a character from Marvel Comics called Scarlet Witch. This character has one of the craziest feats ever of essentially changing reality and essentially removing the X gene and removing the powers from about 99% of the mutant population on the planet by uttering the words "no more mutants," creating one of the most iconic scenes in Marvel history. But what most people don't understand about this particular scene and scenario and this feat is the fact that Scarlet Witch was powered by the life force. This thing that powered her up that let her do this in the first place. But the way people talk about Scarlet Witch, they act like she could just do this whenever she want. No, they were conditioned and she was affected by an external source. So and the way they talk about it is treating as if she always had this when she hasn't, and she hasn't had this in years. Or let me bring up a more recent example that's happened. There's a series on the internet called Death Battle, which essentially does hypothetical power scaling fights between two fictional characters. And there was a recent one called Denji versus Yuji. Denji's from the hit series Chainsaw Man, and Yuji's from the hit series Jujutsu Kaisen. Just for reference, just to let you guys know if you haven't actually read either of those series. But basically, everyone was saying that Yuji was going to win the fight, just purely because of the fact that he would be funny. But it turns out Denji won the fight, mainly because the fact that Denji is just stronger, faster, better regeneration, can heal everything, has better durability, better speed, and is just stronger in general. The Chainsaw Man universe is just way stronger. And Yuji just doesn't have the feats to back it up, or anything else. The Jujutsu Kaisen universe isn't that strong in general. And people are screaming at the top of their lungs, saying, Yuji should have won! It's not fair! They rigged it! It's not fair! Which, not really. Like, the Chainsaw Man universe is just stronger in general, and Denji has just done more impressive stuff than Yuji has done in his series. And you would only say and complain that Yuji would should have won that fight is if you haven't read Chainsaw Man, or you either haven't read either, or you probably only heard your content creators glazing Yuji, especially because of the spin-off series hyping him up so much, when he doesn't really do that many impressive things. And you also hear this really weird argument about Yuji in the fight and saying, oh, they didn't count his feats in the spin-off series Modelo. And they did use it. You guys just weren't paying attention. He did use the blood redirection bullshit and all that cool stuff. So I don't know what you guys are talking about. And I know for a fact you guys don't actually watch Death Battle and you only watch content creators talk about it, is because you know for a fact that Death Battle, when they do the visuals for the fights, they use the most popular version of the character for the character models of the character. They did this, for example, with the Ben 10 versus Green Lantern fight, which I don't agree with the results, by the way. But I will say that they used the classic Ben 10 design and stuff, and they would have him doing stuff that only Ultimate and Alien Force Ben will be able to do, like using Alien X and such, despite being the classic design, because they use the most popular version of the character for the character model and for how the characters look. So just because Yuji doesn't look like he's from Modelo, they are still counting Modelo feats for it. They're just using the most popular look for the character. And also the fact that that visual doesn't even matter in the grand scheme of things, as the only thing that matters in this power scaling debate and argument is literally the beginning of the video where they explain all the feats and stats of the character, and the conclusion that explains why they think the character would win. So I don't know why you all are so focused on the visuals for the fight when it doesn't really matter, because they're literally just meant to be entertaining. So there's not two grown-ass dudes just talking the whole time, talk about stats and hypotheticals and what could happen, and instead have a visual for people to actually watch so they can at least be entertained, so they actually have something else to talk about besides two people just talking the whole time. And don't make me bring up the fact that immediately after the Death Battle concluded, every JJK fan immediately went to read Chainsaw Man trying to debunk the fight because they realized that their character series is not that strong. And the funny thing is that most JJK fans haven't actually read their own media or read Modelo in general. So technically speaking, more JJK fans have actually read Chainsaw Man more than their own media, which is so funny to me. And even then, they still don't understand everything. Also, I'm just going to take the time to explain how the grading system in JJK works, because I feel like there's a big misunderstanding about it and how people are using it for scaling and just for things in general. Because the grading system in JJK, to be considered a special grade sorcerer, means you have to have the capability of destabilizing or taking over a country. But what people don't understand is that the grading system is extremely flawed and Jujutsu Society is extremely corrupt. Because a character like Maki is a grade 4 sorcerer. Even before the buffs or even after the buffs, she's still considered grade 4. Because the Jujutsu Society is literally corrupt as hell. And the grading system is literally used for political power to show either how much of a threat someone is to said society. Like, for example, a character like Geto, who is very not that strong, but has the ability to swarm and essentially create an army whenever he wants from cursed spirits, is an extremely dangerous ability. But that doesn't correlate to strength, because Gedo, a special grade sorcerer who's been in the society for a long time, literally lost to a 6-month trained Yuta. Even with Rika, I'm not gonna debate who should have won that fight. But I just want, for example, it's not directly related to power. It's literally just the fact that you are a threat to the society and that you could take over a country. That doesn't correlate to strength. If I have the power to control people's minds, that doesn't, and I could take over like 100 people's minds, and I have no limit to my range of how I can do that, that doesn't put me on the same level as Gojo. You people are not using this correctly. You think the grading system works a certain way when it's clearly a corrupt system that literally has a very arbitrary thing that doesn't relate to power level. It's literally just a threat level, if anything. And also the fact that they could be a threat to the society as a whole, because of people like Gojo and Gedo are valid threats for this society. Or Yuji, for example, in Modelo would be considered a threat to society, as he wants to fit, as he could very easily be a dangerous threat, because the fact that he is basically immortal and hasn't aged that much over the 80 years, and the fact he's gone missing and has fought Sukuna, it makes him a special grade threat because of the unique circumstances around him, and the fact that he was a vessel for Sukuna. And there are two factors I can say that will have probably are the reason why power scaling has become the thing it is today. And it's because mainly social media and the versus battle wiki. And people are very, very stupid, because the problem with the versus battle wiki is that they will kind of like pump up character stats and stuff as people treat these as definitive, like actual useful for scaling, when people haven't done it, or they listen to content creators yap or get things wrong and they believe it, because most people that do power scaling don't actually interact with the media, so they'll never be able to correct the versus battle wiki or TikTok creators, YouTubers, and all these things, which creates a very weird situation of where the misinformation gets parroted and treated as fact. It's like saying a bad joke and everyone repeats the bad joke and thinking it's a canon joke. It doesn't really make sense. And because literally the only real solution I can say for this is that if people need to stop trusting these websites and actually look and do the research themselves, instead of just trusting a wiki page that is done by people who are very clear favored, have favorites, or just don't know what they're talking about, or actually haven't read the media as well, and only look at stuff that's happening on the page. Because certain things on the website doesn't make sense when you actually read the media that they're talking about. And also the fact that literally the only thing I can say about power scaling, and the way to make sure and to fix it, is stop taking it seriously and stop treating it as this definitive way to treat a character. Because power scaling in the grand scheme of things doesn't matter. This hypothetical of who beats who is for fun. It's a joke. But people take it way too seriously when it's really not that serious. This is purely a hypothetical situation that's never gonna happen, but people will treat it as if it does, and it doesn't really matter. It is a purely fun question that people take it way too seriously as if it's a sport, when it's not. It is a purely fun conversation, and that is the solution to power scaling, is quite literally, don't take it too serious. Actually read the media that you're talking about and actually do research and stuff. Listen to content creators or the versus battle wiki to figure out what these characters do if you want to do this. But never let the power scaling become a replacement for the character, the quality of a character. It should never be like that, because if we apply that logic to character writing, then it quite literally makes so many characters bad characters, because this arbitrary stupid rule, because people treat power scaling as a definitive way to determine a character is good or not. Like, take for example, a character like Senku from Dr. Stone would be considered a terrible character because he's not very physically strong in his series or in the world or against other universes. So yeah, or a character like Light from Death Note wouldn't be very strong either, so I guess he would be a terrible character too. We have to treat characters from a writing perspective and not a power scaling perspective. Because power scaling is hypothetical and fun. because most authors do not care about how strong their characters are. Because the minute you bring up a ruler and start doing crazy ass measurements by determining the pixels on someone's butt hair just to figure out how tall something is in a series where height doesn't really follow a conventional system. Like for example, One Piece, whose heights don't freaking make sense and the art style is extremely wacky and toony and inconsistent. And to start making random claims that don't make sense and disagree with the author, the actual creator of a series or a story, and start saying they're wrong and what they're saying doesn't make sense. Like for example, saying that Jolene Cujo can explode someone's head with a single punch because she deflected a meteor with her wrist, using her Stan's wrist or something, even though the series makes it very clear that the limits of her Stan's strength is that she can bend a penny. Like, guys, you can't argue with a literal author. What are we doing, please? Literally, read the media that you're talking about instead of making arbitrary math equations to calculate something, because most authors don't care about that. They do not care about the math behind someone doing that kind of stuff. They only care about telling a cool story with cool moments and great writing. What are we doing? Stories are not designed to be power scaled, and people that do treat it as such don't make sense or aren't that smart. Okay, so yeah, that's all I really have to say about power scaling. It's a very weird love-hate relationship for me, as I do think power scaling is a very fun topic to talk about, but it's very annoying with how some people take it like a competitive sport when it's supposed to just be a fun little lunch table argument or conversation. But basically, it's fine if you power scale and do it. Just actually try to have some standards and don't take it too seriously. That's all I ask of you guys if you do power scale and if you're watching this. And I really appreciate you guys watching to the end of this video. And I know that these videos have been kind of arbitrary and like very weird, but I'm trying my best and I'm trying new stuff. So yeah, thank you for watching. I really appreciate you guys making it to the end. So yeah, stay safe, have a good day, and goodbye.